library, but we're hopeful this will just be the start of many, and the grant has made it possible for all of us to sort of join forces. So have fun. If anybody needs more supplies or paper, just let me know and I'll have some at the library for everyone to pick up as we go week to week. So
very good.
All right, Miss Lisa, I think we should go ahead and get started.
Okay. Sorry, I was just logging in on my other device too so that I can see everybody. I have to have one up above my desk so that I can see, or you can see what I'm doing. But I like to have one sitting in front of me where I can see some of you. So once we get going, if you have any questions, you can wave at the camera or hit a raise your hand button or something, and Miss Jamie will watch for some of those things too. So does everybody, it looks like everybody's kind of sitting at a table or something. That's good. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to tape our paper down to the table. And can you all see, let's see, make sure I'm centered here in the picture. Okay. So maybe you want to watch a few things that I do first, and then I'll give you all a little bit of time to do it. So I'm going to pull off a piece of tape that's a little bit longer than my paper, and I'm going to break it off. I'm going to start in one corner. Oops, I have a little bit of hair stuck to that. And I'm going to cover about, the tape goes half over my paper and half over to my table. Then I'm going to go down to the other side, and you can kind of see through the tape a little bit to see that you've got half of it on the paper and half of it on the table. And then you don't have to push it down very hard, but maybe get the corners down. I'm going to do top and bottom first. Doesn't really matter. I guess you could do the sides first, but I like to do the top and the bottom first. So I press one side down, then I go over, check the distance on the other side, and press that down. You might have to practice this a little bit. You can do this with other pieces of paper throughout the week and kind of practice your taping techniques. And if there's any, I see some adults helping some kids, that's good for the younger ones especially. Appreciate the being my hands and eyes during this class when I can't be with you in person. And I am also going to tape the short ends. Same way, I usually hold the top down in place, make sure the bottom is lined up, and then put them down. So it helps if you roll out a piece of tape and break it off first so that you can hold both ends of the piece of the tape and kind of adjust it as you're putting it down on the paper. Then when everybody gets that done, we're going to divide our paper into a couple of more sections. So I'm going to take one long one, and I'm going to try to find about the middle point on both sides of my paper. Press it down on one side, make sure it's pretty straight, and then press it down on the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing from the top to the bottom. And you can divide up your page in a number of different ways. You could do a whole bunch of side-by-side sections. You could do them small, you could do them big. All right, I'm trying to watch and make sure you're all kind of keeping up with that. So when I see some of you are done, you could give us a thumbs up when everybody in your house is all done and ready to go with that. I know there's few houses here where we have quite quite a few people working, so. I know you all have to share that tape, so we'll wait here till everybody's ready for the next step. Are you guys who are done, are you all completely done with school for the year?
Yep, they're giving thumbs
All-
up. So it looks like
Okay. Okay.
Wait,
And-
we have some, this is
Go
both
ahead.
Caledonia and Houston done? Because I know we have some other folks that might not be right in Caledonia, but might be in Houston County.
Right, so this is the libraries in Caledonia, but this is open to pretty much everybody in Houston County, is that right?
Yep.
All right, okay, I see some faces looking this way, or looking towards your camera. So everybody feel like they have 4 spaces on their piece of paper now? Okay, so now we're gonna take out your pastels, and you can take them all out. I have a nice little pencil holder thing on my desk here that kind of holds them. If you don't have a place and they're going to roll around and roll off on the floor, you might want to just take out 1 or 2 colors at a time. So I think we will start with 3 colors. Let's do red, orange, and yellow. And Miss Jamie, does everyone have their own set of crayons when there's
Yep.
more than one in a household? Okay, good. So
Yeah,
everybody
the only
should have
things
theirs.
that they might be sharing is the tape and the white
White
paint
markers.
pen.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
All right, that's what I thought. I better double check.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna work in 1 square at a time. And these look like crayons. They're called oil pastels. They work a lot like a crayon, but they're actually kind of halfway between crayon and almost like a hard paint. And they're really waxy. I don't know if any of you have tried any of them, but what we're gonna do today is the start of what we call blending. So when you blend something, sometimes you can make new colors. Sometimes you can fade from one color to another color. Can anyone tell me, and you can unmute yourself if you have to answer a question. Can anyone tell me what happens if you have red paint and yellow paint and you mix the 2 together? Go ahead, someone tap on their microphone and tell us what happens with red and yellow paint.
Orange.
Very good, you get orange. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make kind of like almost a rainbow that goes from red to yellow. We're also gonna use an actual orange, so we're not just gonna make orange, but we're gonna try to blend them. So I'm gonna start with the red, and I'm gonna take one of my squares in my paper, and let's go from left to right. So I'm gonna divide up and maybe use a square that's less than half of that, and I'm gonna just fill it in with red. You can press fairly hard and fill in the space and don't have to worry about covering everything if there's some little white specks. I like to kind of go right up to the tape. And the size of your square doesn't matter too much right now. When you're done with that, we're going to divide another section and fill that with orange. You can actually overlap into the red a little bit if you want. Then we're going to do the same thing with yellow and kind of finish filling that square with yellow. sometimes this paper seems to have bumps that kind of go long ways, little bumps and ridges. And sometimes it helps if you go back and forth that long direction to fill in some of the spots if you want more paint on, we're gonna call this paint, kind of like a hard paint. If you want more paint on your paper, you can go both directions. You can also kind of do circles if you need to go through and fill something in. See lots of coloring going on. That's excellent. One of the things you might want to have at your workspace is a napkin or a paper towel. Sometimes your fingers get a little messy doing this, and sometimes we might actually need to wipe off the end of your crayon when it kind of gets in two colors at once. You can also sometimes just do that on another piece of paper, like just a piece of copier paper out of your printer or something like that. So if anybody feels like they need to jump up and get something like that at any point, go right ahead. We're getting those spaces filled in. Looks like some of you are done with that. So now I'm going to go back to my yellow crayon, and I'm going to start in my yellow square, and I'm kind of going to go back and forth on the line between the orange and the yellow, and I'm going to see if I can kind of blend out that line. So there's a space here where I'm getting some orange into my yellow space and some yellow into my orange space. And they kind of disappear in between the two. Sometimes when you're doing this part, it helps if you do more of a circle. You can go all different directions. You can also, when you get enough of that waxy paint on the paper, you can actually use your finger to smear this. And this is why it's nice to have a napkin close by. So make sure your finger's clean, and you can just kind of rub gently across those areas. And what you'll notice is that they kind of just smear together. And sometimes you'll get a little bit in a spot where you didn't expect it to. You'll get a little tiny chunk or something that goes where it wasn't wanted. You can go back over it with the right color, blend it out a little bit. So I ended up with kind of a yellow section, a light orange section, and then my orange section. And you can probably guess what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take my orange crayon and I'm going to blend between the red and the orange section. Same thing. You end up having to put a lot of this paint on the paper, and you will fill in all those little white spots. The orange and the red seem like they're a little bit harder to blend. The red is so dark that you just can see that line all the time. Let's try a few different things to go back and kind of rub out the line in between the two so that it just gradually goes from one color to the other. You can, with pastels, these crayons, you can keep going back over areas and gradually change it a little bit at a time as you work. And if you don't like it later, you can change it some more. Then I think I'm going to do a little bit of red. That's just that bright red. Does anyone know what the three colors are called that are red, blue, and yellow? If you know the answer to that, you can turn your microphone on and tell us what that group of colors is called.
Primary.
Very good. These are the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. When we mix two of those colors, like red and yellow, and we get a second color like orange, those are called the secondary colors. Okay, so to make my red a little bit darker on the very end, I think, let's take out our black crayon and put a really narrow line of black right along the tape on the end of that. Then you can take your red crayon and kind of go over that black and smear it out into your red so you get a really dark red edge on that one. Back and forth, just kind of keep rubbing. You can go back over it with your finger. If you do something especially like black, and you get your finger dirty, make sure you wipe that off before you touch the lighter colors like your yellow. And you can actually also take your white crayon and do the same thing on the other end. It won't be really white, but you can lighten up the yellow. So it goes all the way from a dark red to a light yellow. Wipe off my crayon a little bit. And can anybody guess which colors we're going to do next? I see someone's got their colors already in hand. Excellent. Let's try a few more colors in this one. And I'm going to go to my square next to the one we just did, but I'm going to do everything kind of in the backwards order from what we did that time. I'm going to start with my lightest, and I'm actually going, you won't be able to see this very well, but I'm actually going to put down a little bit of white in the corner here. That'll let me do a really light line next. And you can kind of see, let's see, can you see? Yeah, you can see my pencil slot here. I have all my crayons in order going from the yellow to the dark blue. And we're going to blend those. So now we're going to have to make our sections a little bit smaller. Make sure you don't have any orange on your yellow crayon. We don't want orange anymore. Now I'm going to guess, but I'm going to do a smallish yellow section. And some people like to put their crayons back down on the bottom of their pile so that they're always in order. And I'm going to do the light green. Put that on the bottom. I'm going to go to the darker green. And I think I'm going to change up my order just a little bit here. I'm actually going to do my dark blue next to my dark green. And then I'll end with the light blue and maybe a little bit of white on the very end of that one. So I started light on this one and I'm going to end light instead of going to the dark. And I think I'm going to go back over in the same order that I put them on. So I'm going to start my blending between my white and yellow. So I'm going to do kind of a light yellow section there. You see how you didn't end up with very much white. Most of the yellow kind of blended into that section. And I'm going to use the yellow on the section between that and the light green. One of the things that I really like about using oil pastels is that you get some really bright, bold colors. Hard to be really super subtle with the oil pastels. They're pretty bright. I'm going to do about half of that light green that way. I'm going to take the light green and go across it and the dark green. I could probably use either the dark green or the blue to blend back and forth between those two colors. So maybe I'll try some of each. Here's the green blending. Maybe I'll try the blue on the bottom half. See if there's a difference. Yep, if I use the green, the blue crayon going into the green, I get a lot of blue. So maybe I'll go back and fill in some of this dark green here. I think I'm going to use the light blue into the dark blue. Maybe do some dark blue in between those colors. Color in all the little white specks. And I'll use my white on the end to blend that into the light blue. You can always go back and use your finger in some spots if you want. And sometimes you can change how it looks by how hard you press with your finger. And I'm going to change fingers when I change these colors because I don't want any of my green to kind of work its way over into the blue section. And a little. Anybody else getting messy fingers yet? Make sure you get your fingers cleaned up. Yeah, I love it. You also notice, I don't know if you guys can see on my camera if it's close enough, that you get little specks of loose color. Sometimes you want to lightly brush those off. Okay, one of the colors that we don't have a nice one in this mixture, in this set, that everybody likes is purple. And I found it's actually a really hard color to make. So here's a couple of ideas. Can anybody tell me which two colors you would use to make purple? Go ahead. Someone just
Red. Blue and
Blue and red. Very good. So you can start in either one of your other squares, but this time I'm going to actually start with my white crayon. And I'm going to, maybe I'll have to mark it with the colors so you can see it a little bit better. I'm going to do red and light blue on the edges. I'm going to color everything in between my red line and my light blue line with white first. So I'm going to try to cover the paper with that white in that middle section. And it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of red or blue mixed into that, because we're going to use those eventually. But we kind of need to put a base down. And with this set of colors, I found that doing it with the white crayon first seems to give us our best chance of getting this. Then, this is really layering. Well, let's see, you can do the ends too. Do a light blue end and a red end. Here's another question for you. What happens when we mix red with white?
it turns pink.
Very good. So you could experiment a little bit here and just do a little bit of red overlapping into the white. And then smear that. You could get more of a pink color. When you do it with the blue, it really doesn't change the colors. It just gives it a lighter blue. We don't have a separate name for a light blue. Like pink has its own name. It's not just called light red, is it? Okay. Now I'm going to go back. It doesn't really matter if you do red first or blue first. It kind of changes the color of our purplish tone a little bit, but you can always go back and add one or the other. So I'm going to do blue first, and I'm kind of going to go a light. I'm not pressing really hard. I'm just putting a little bit of blue over the top of that white. And I'm going to do just a little bit of red over the top of that. I'm just pressing super lightly here, just kind of letting the crayon glide over my paper. And I'm going to go back to the light blue to blend it. And I find you kind of have to work in circles with this to get those lighter colors to work together. Kind of smearing them. If anybody finds out that they like working with oil pastels when we're done with this class, you might like to do something like this eventually. See if I can get that right underneath there. This is a set of oil pastels that has 50 different colors in it. So this set has some really pretty purples. So if you like purple and there's not enough purple in this, you can get different colored crayons that are already the correct color. And if anybody wants to get other supplies and you have any questions, you can text or email or whatever, and Miss Stephanie can get that information to you. She can ask us or whatever. Just for fun, let's try a little bit of blue, the dark blue, kind of down the middle. And again, I'm doing this pretty lightly. I'm going to blend that out with my finger. Still not a great purple, but it kind of has a purplish look to it. That's about as good as we can get with this set of crayons. And you can try using a little bit more red or a little bit more blue in different mixes to see what you can get, how that changes the color. This is something you can go back later and either try again or use your own combination of colors. One of the things you'll probably find if you try this on different pieces of paper, you could try different types of paper. A piece of copier paper probably isn't going to work really well because if you start rubbing on it, it's not going to, it might rip. So you kind of need what we call cardstock, something that's a little bit heavier piece of paper. I do like to try it on different types of paper. I have some cardstock that's really, really smooth, and that works a little bit different than the stuff that has kind of a texture to the paper. Okay. Let's see, what do we have left? Oh, we have some skin tones. Let's try. What do you think? Should we go from the dark brown to an orange maybe? So let's do 3 sections in our last square on the paper here. And we can do the brown on one side. I think on this one, I'm going to do the lightest color in the middle. You can see that when if I go up next to the brown and get brown flecks on my crayon, it kind of pulls it into the middle. So if you don't want that, don't quite go up to the brown. That'll keep your colors cleaner, and then you can go back later and fill in those spaces. And I'm going to do orange on the end. This is going to be a really crazy quilt kind of piece of paper when we're all done with it. I think for this one, I'm going to use my lightest color to try to blend everything. So I'm going to crisscross across those lines between the 2 spots. And you'll notice when you get to the brown and the light peachy color that it's really hard to blend that out. You'll always kind of see that line of where the brown is. So you might have to go back over really lightly with more brown over the top of the peach and blend it with your finger. And I think this is going to be another one where I'm going to put a little black on the very, very edge of the brown, so I can see how dark I can get that brown. This would be like a tree trunk brown. So if we're going to draw some nature things, we're going to want some dark browns. And I haven't tried that too much on the lighter colors like the orange, so I'm going to put just a little strip of black right along the edge of my tape. And I'm going to see what happens when I blend that out into the orange. Pretty dirty looking, so we probably don't want a lot of it. And I could go to a clean side of my crayon by just kind of turning it around in my fingers. Get a little bit of black smeared all the way out in there. Sometimes I just take my crayon and I wipe it around on my finger to clean it off on my hand. All right, now I don't think I have the same drawing pencil that you guys do. This is just an old one that I have, but if you, Miss Jamie, they have an actual pencil in the pack?
They all have an ebony pencil, so it's,
An
it's
ebony
very
pencil.
similar.
Very
Yep,
similar,
so
awesome.
It's the Prismacolor ebony pencil.
Very good. All right, so everybody find your drawing pencil. And today we're just going to do some random shapes and stuff to kind of decorate this a little bit. Next week, when we get started, or when we do a project, we'll actually draw something that you might find in Houston County. But for today, I wanted to really try a bunch of the things that we're going to use in this class. And then you can use this piece of paper kind of as your sample, and you'll remember how to do each of these things. So let's see, I'm going to take my green, yellow, blue section, and my brown one is right underneath it. So I think I'm going to draw, and I'm going to go right over my tape, and I'm going to draw a tree branch. It's not going to be super big because I don't want to spend too much time with my drawing. But you'll notice that your drawing pencil will draw right over the oil pastels. If you tried something like a Sharpie marker or a felt tip pen, you would not be able to draw on these waxy crayons. It's kind of funny. I'm going to also do some branches off of that are smaller, and maybe some little teeny tiny branches off of those. Make some slightly bigger ones every once in a while. When you're drawing tree branches, it helps to kind of know what kind of tree you want it to look like, because some trees, like maple trees, which you can usually find around here, wherever there's one branch, there's probably a branch or a broken branch right across from it. So when they have a branch here, they have a branch right across from it. Always opposite of each other. I didn't do a very good job of that up here, but let's say I'm making that into a maple, so I'm going to put one here where it's kind of opposite of it. I think I need another set down here a little bit lower. They don't always end up looking the same shape, but they are usually across from each other. Now, I'm going to take my ebony pencil and I'm going to kind of start to color that in on the inside of each of those lines. Some of the smaller ones you can just completely color it in with your ebony pencil. Some of them you might want to just do an outline and then come back in with your black crayon and fill it in if the space is really big. I am going to go over some of my pencil with my black crayon because the black crayon is a little bit darker, but I'm not going to try to get it up to the edges. I don't want to go over into my other parts of my paper. And you'll notice I didn't bother to fill in this spot here. That's where it goes across the tape and you won't see it anyway, so I just left that. Now, here's one of the fun ways you can do leaves on your trees, and it won't show up too well in the green, but you can do it around some of the smaller branches, maybe in the yellow section. And I'm just going to do a tap, 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 kind of right around it. It doesn't have to be right on the branches specifically, it's just kind of in the area. I'm going to do that in the other colors. But where I was in the dark green section, I'm actually going to try to do some tapping with lighter green and actually even yellow. Because obviously the regular green wouldn't show up there. Then you can also go back and tap some yellow, a little bit maybe, in some of the other areas. Or you put some of the light green in your yellow section. Did anybody ever notice that when you look at the leaves on a tree, they aren't all exactly the same color? Sometimes there's a variety of colors, especially in the spring when they're first coming out. Okay, just for the fun of it, let's try your paint marker. And everybody see if they can get the cover off of it. This is not really a marker like you think of markers. It's actually like a paintbrush that has paint inside of it. And when you first start using it, there won't be any paint in the tip of it. So what you have to do, I have a cover off of a yogurt container here. You could do it on another piece of paper. You need to actually put your pen straight up and down, put the tip on your paper, whatever, and then pump it. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down until you can see that the paint is coming out the bottom of it. Mine, the first time I did it, it took quite a while to get it all the paint out to the end of it. And I am just going to take that paint pen and I'm going to lightly put some lines in here, kind of on the top of my, kind of on one side of my branches. That'll kind of make it look like the sun is hitting it there or something. You could also use it as stars in your dark blue section to make it look kind of like a starry night sky. Doesn't take much, just a few taps here and there with that paint pen. And then when you go to put the cover back on, if you did get any color on the tip of it, you can wipe it off and keep it a little clean. But make sure that that cover snaps all the way back on. Mine was kind of a hard snap. When you put any white paint marker on a design you're working on, make sure you let it dry before you smudge your fingers across it or anything, because that is, like I said, it's actually paint. It takes a little bit of time to dry. Now, the stuff that I put on my tree is maybe a little bit too bright white. So I think most of it's almost dry. I'm gonna take maybe my brown and I'm gonna kind of smear it around a little bit. So it's still the white paint with a little bit of wet, but while it's on there, I can smear it with the other colors. And that'll make it not quite so bold of a spot. Also on my black, you can go in with the lighter colors like a brown and add just some spots so it's not all one color. Because when you look at a tree branch, it's not all exactly the same color. So you can add a little bit of color into that tree branch. And when you get all done with that, here's the tricky part. We need to take the tape back off. Now, you have to go super slow when you do this or the paper will rip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the last one I put on. And I'm going to kind of pull it down and I'm going to stick it to my finger. And then really slowly, I'm going to pull it, keeping my finger real close to the paper. I'm going to pull across it and pull it at an angle. And if you go really slow, usually you can get it back off without ripping the paper too much. If we had more time, and if you guys want to do this later, you can maybe draw some other shapes or designs in some of your other squares. And then let's see, which one did I put on next? I think I did the middle crisscross piece. So I found the best way to do this is just really gently keep pulling it off, go slow, and keep a kind of a steady pressure on it. If you do get where it starts to rip a little bit, you can kind of hold it down with your finger and usually get it back off. Every once in a while, you're going to get one that rips that you just don't like the way it works. So you might have to go back over it later with more crayons and kind of fix a spot.
I also find that if it starts to rip from one side, if I go on the others, if I start pulling from the other side, sometimes that helps.
Yes, very, very much so. I've done that a lot of times. I find I can get the best pressure if I start at the top and come down towards me. And because I'm right-handed, if I start on the left side and pull to the right, I seem to be able to do that better. So since we're almost done here, if anybody gets all their tape off and wants to hold their paper up really close to their camera so everybody else can see it, we like to share with each other what we did in the classes. We'd love to see what you have. Because the one thing I found is that even though everybody's kind of following the same directions, they all look different in the end.
I know something that Stephanie and I from the library talked about was oh, look at that, that's great. Miss Stephanie, do you want to talk about, we had discussed maybe the possibility of if they can take photos, they can share them with the library, or maybe if they hold on to their stuff in the end after all of COVID is over, we can actually display their work in the library, especially when we start making the pictures of Houston County.
That would be lovely.
I would love that. What we could actually do is if you want to stop in the library, we can make a copy with our colored printer so parents don't have to do it at home. Or if you could even take a picture with your phone or your camera and send it to me at the library. You can either take a picture and send it on Messenger through our Facebook page or my email address, which is seggert@selco.info, and I will send that out to everybody. I am going to send a little treat to every child that sends me a copy of their picture. I will send you something back in the mail. And then, like Miss Jamie said, hopefully at the end we can have a reception for the community to show everybody this awesome art.